minion from the whole group here tonight.
Well, that's a good point. I'm not going to go further than that.
I really rushed home.
There are other places of worship that have minions. So
yes, they're true. They're true. Hopefully, they're indoors in a Beis HaKnesses where there's Kedushas Beis HaKnesses.
Wow.
Yes, that's a very big mitzvah. Anyway, we are Chodesh Tov. It is Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, Aleph Cheshvan. And we're in the Rambam, La'am. We're on page Nun Ches, which coincidentally is Noach. All right, third line from the top. And in Sefaria, we're in section 15, subsection 72. We've got two more Sidorim to do, Kodshim and Taharos. Now we divide the material regarding Kodshim, literally holy things. We begin with the korbanos that the priests bring, and that is Maseches Zvachim. The word Zevach literally means slaughterings. So it's the holy slaughtering. It all talks about the korbanos that are brought. And when we finish the korbanos, we go to menachos, the meal offerings, kefi sidur Torah, as they are arranged in the Torah. If you notice, in the Torah, we start with the Olah, and after the Olah, we do the Mincha. So that's the way the Torah arranges them as well. And certainly the Korban is, the animal offerings are much more prestigious than the Menachos. Okay, fine. Now that we finished the slaughterings of the holy things, and everything that accompanies their halachas, we speak about slaughtering other korbanos, which means chulin. Okay, al seder hakosa, the way again it's arranged in the Torah. Where the Torah says in Sefer Dvarim, it says you will bring all of the korbanos to Hashem in the place that I designate, aka Yerushalayim. But then it says, Amar, then it says a second mitzvah after we're talking about the regular korbanos, B'chol avas nafshecha tizbach, and all the things you may desire, you may slaughter and eat, v'chalta basar, you may eat meat. This is what the Torah is saying now that you know you can only bring korbanos in Yerushalayim, but if you want to have your own rib steaks, you can do whatever you want, but it's not kodshim, it is regular mundane things. Now, it's very similar to Kodshim in the fact that we slaughter the animals, almost all of them, the same way, except for the birds with Malika. But otherwise, so therefore, and it's right the next topic in the Torah. So therefore, Vehevi Achar Menachos Chulin, the Meseches Chulin comes after Menachos. So we have Zvachim, Menachos, Chulin. That's the first three. V'achar Chulin, Bechoros. Then we get to Bechoros, that the firstborn animal goes to the Beis Hamikdash, goes to the Kohen, etc., etc. Why do we do that? Al Seder HaKosef, continuing in the order of the Psukim in the Torah. Okay? Kamo Chen, similar. After it says you to bet to whatever you desire, you will shech. What's it say next? But you may not eat in your gates. You may not eat in your homes. Maser de gancha, that's meiser of grain, v'tiroshecha, v'yitzarecha, and ubechoros bekorcha v'tzoncha, and the bechor of the sheep and cattle. You may not eat. Why? Because they have to go to Hashem. So again, you see that order fits. After chulin would go bechoros. Okay, so now,
Rabbi, quick question. Getting back to what you said about only at the Beit HaMikdash. Wasn't there a time where they did do korbanot in Shiloh or somewhere else?
Yeah, but that still is the place where I have chosen. Yeah, that's a whole complex issue. There was a certain time where bamos were permitted, but during Shiloh, that means a place that I chose. So when there was a Mishkan in Shiloh, so they couldn't bring korbanos anywhere else. Of course, there were certain central places. But the classic one was Yerushalayim. So that's the main idea. We're only saying that if you want to eat other meat that's not sacred and that you're not bringing to the sacred place, that's called chulin. You can eat that in other places. So now, when they finish the topic of the holy things per se, now we go to what we'll call quasi-holy things. Sedar Dmei Ha'erchin. Then they get with the financial arrangements of these evaluations, where a person says, for example, I'm giving to the Beis HaMikdash the evaluation of what I am worth, or other things like that. Shem Kamo Kain Kodesh, there are Kodesh, but they don't have the Kedushas Atzma. Remember, it's not like an animal who is inherently Kadosh, but rather these things are monetary Kedusha. So Kamen Kain Kodesh is a lower level of Kedusha, and therefore Vehevi Acher Bechoros Erechin. After Meseches Bechoros comes Erechin, because this is the evaluations of different things, that the money valuation becomes Kodesh, a much lower level of Kedusha, like Kedusha's Bedek Habayis. After Erchin comes Tmura, when you want to exchange an animal that you made Hegdish and you want to exchange on something else, and the penalty is that they both become Kodesh, then you might say that should come before Erchin because it's dealing with animals. But the answer is, number one, you shouldn't be doing this. Tmura is an Aveira. So that's something that should never have been done anyway. And second of all, the most important answer is, Al Pi Sidram, because of Kamoke. That's the order that they are in the Torah. That after in Parshas Bechukosai, where Erchin are mentioned, right after Erchin, it talks about Tmura. So we're going to go in the order as it is in the Torah. Okay. When it finishes about all these categories, all of a sudden we shift gears completely, and this Masechta would seem to have no relevance at all to Kodshim. Heviakach Maseches Krisus. It brings Maseches Krisus. Now, this is a very interesting thing. Why are they bringing in Maseches Krisus over here? Because all it is telling us all the bears you do that get kares. What does that have to do with the korbanos? It's telling us all that the first Mishne talks about all, I think it's like 36, whatever, different types of averas you do that you get kares. What does that have to do with Kodshim? The answer is, first of all, you got to put it somewhere, right? So where are you going to put it? Now, think for a minute. You're not going to put krisus in Zroim. It has nothing to do with Zroim, right? It has nothing to do with Moed. It has nothing to do with Nezikin, because remember, kares is something that has nothing to do with a Bezdin. It's up to Hashem, right? So that's a whole different aspect. It's not really uniquely women's halachas, and it certainly. So what is it going to be? It's not Taharos. So the closest it could be, it's really not Kodshim either. So now we got to find a link, some kind of a hook. So what's the hook? So it's very easy. He says. So he says it's going to increases. Any mitzvah that you, or avera that you do rather, that you get kares. Anything that's really the topic. Why? Should be feel seder hamina zeh bekodshim. Because when we look at this type of thing in Kodshim, what do we mean? What's the connection? Because where do you get kares? What types of things you get kares for? Shekol davar shechayavim al zdono kares chayavim al shkigaso chatas. Okay, so therefore, because anything that has kares, when you do it intentionally, has a korban chatas if you do it unintentionally. And therefore, that's the connection. Since we talk about korban chatas, that is part of Kodshim. So now kares, you only get kares for mazes on things that if it would be a shogeg, you would have to bring a chatas. That's almost all el b'ma'at, but there's a couple exceptions, like not bringing a korban pesach, not getting a bris milah, that you would get a kares for mazid, but you don't bring a chatas. But otherwise, so that's the connection. It's not the strongest connection, but it's more than anything else to any other seder. Okay, so now what's after that? Vehevi acher krisus. So what's after krisus? Me'ilah. Meseches Me'ila, misappropriation. Remember we said you only can be moil if you don't realize the thing was hektish and use it for your own uses. Why? Mipnei shadvarim shechayom aleh me'ila yoser kalim me'advarim shechayom lechatus. Because the things that you get transgressed me'ila is a much lighter thing than what you do for chatus. For example, the korban chatus you bring for averis and ashkoda, that if you did it b'mezid and with hasra, you'd get skila, for example. Chilul Shabbos, you bring a korban chatus, but if you did it b'mezid, you'd get killed. Now, what's me'ila? Me'ila, we have, for example, an asha me'ila. You bring it if it was b'shogeg, but if it wasn't b'shogeg, all you get is lashes. If you misappropriate intentionally, you get lashes. So it's not as severe of an avera. And therefore, although there are korbanos, but it's a lower tier type of korban, and therefore we bring that mesechta afterwards. The hevi acher me'ila, what comes after me'ila, meseches tamid, comes meseches tamid. I l'chur, that's a korban, but heiniach bo b'achrona, why leave it to almost the end? There's no real great wisdom, no prohibitions, valheter not allowed. Elasipur, it's really just a story. It was just a description of the entire tamid process. There's not really svaras over there, or this is mutter. This is the way a korban tamid is brought. So it's very straightforward story-like sayings. So therefore, you put it near the end. But there's still one more. Behavior acher tamid midos. We bring after Meseches Tamid midus, which means the measurements. It gives us all the measurements of the Beis Hamikdash. Now, again, ve'imbo inyan acher elasipur. It's again only a story. Shu zocher midas hamikdash. It mentions the measurements of the Beis Hamikdash, v'tziraso, binyano, its shape and its construction, v'chol inyan and all its aspects. So you might ask, what do I need that Masechet at all for? Remember, it's in the time of the Gemara now. There's no Beis Hamikdash. Why do we need this? Because when we do build the Beis Hamikdash, and therefore we should know what the measurements are, because we're going to have to build a third Beis Hamikdash, and all the measurements were given by Ruach HaKodesh, as it says, Hakol B'chsav Yad Hashem Al Heskil, and that is Meseches Kodshim. Okay, moving on to the final one, which is Taharos. Now that we finished the animal offerings and everything that accompanied it, and the structure of the Beis Hamikdash, that you bring these karbanos. Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped the gun over here. I am sorry. We still have a little bit more Taharos. One more. I jumped the gun. We still have one more Masechtas in Kodshim, which is Meseches Kinim, which is the Masechta of birds' nests. The whole Meseches Kinim is only dealing when certain birds, and a bird for the Echatas, the bird for the Ola, this and that, when they get mixed up. And why is it brought last? Because it doesn't have to necessarily happen. It's only if there's a mistake. Maybe they get mixed and it applies. Maybe they don't get mixed. And also, and the whole discussion over there is really a very small discussion. There's not a lot of topic over there. As will be discussed. That ends Kodshim. We end with 12 Masechtas in Kodshim. Okay, sorry about that. But now we go to Taharos. Now we divide the topic into Taharos, Meseches Kelim. We start Meseches Kelim, the 30 chapters of Kelim. Why? That gives us the overall main categories of all Tumah. The Lisker Kalman, it mentions everything. Shu Makabel Tumah, that does receive Tumah. V'she'ena makabel tuma, and isn't makabel tuma. Because if we know what is makabel tuma, neighbor called verm she makabel and tuma she makabel tuma, we're going to know the things that acquire tuma, that don't acquire tuma, etc., etc. And we get these ideas of avos hatumas and rishon latuma and things like that. So we need to know, what these levels of tuma are. So now, and after kalim, we have ahalos. We have now the tuma that is in tents or in ohel tuma. Because that the main function there is tumas mace. Now we're getting into actual types of tuma. So therefore, it's the strongest of all tuma. So it's first. So kalim gives us the overall concept of what is makabel tuma, what's not makabel tuma, what's an av, what's a rishon, what's a sheni, blah blah blah. But we never really talked about what gives off tuma. So now we start with the first thing that gives off tuma, and all those is only applicable with tumas mace. And that is the strongest of all tumas. That's mentioned first. And afterwards, negoim, blemishes, which means from negat sara'as. We're talking about the leper. Because a leper also, besides a mace, gives off tumas ohel. So therefore, it's a little bit similar to tumas mace, as is explained in its place. And also, it's the next lowest. It could even be higher tuma. It could be higher tumas, but it's very close because we say mitzora is doma lames, and it has a lot of similarities to tumas mace. In other words, tumas oil. We finished tumas mace of negoim, the hadomalo, boladarvini tahara. So now we got to talk about tahara, the hipara aduma. That is the tahara for these people. So therefore, after Nagoyim, you have Meseches Para. Now, okay, so now we've done, these are the two major strong tumas and how you're matar from it. Okay, and now that we finished with the strong tumas, and how to be matar from that. We talk about the relatively lower level tumas, where let's say you have to wait for the sun to go down, and therefore v'sider acher para, and therefore we arranged after para Meseches Taharos, and we call it Meseches Taharos. Now, really, the question is, why are we calling it Meseches Taharos if it's talking about lower levels of tuma? That the day you became tamei, you go to the mikvah, and then you're out of that. So why is that called taharos? If anything, it should be lower level tumas. For karshma taharos b'loshen nikiya, it's using a clean language. Shadiber bahu b'taharos atahuma, and therefore it's a euphemism. And to talk about it is the impurity, the purification of impurity. And therefore, you know what the tuma is, then you'll know that they obviously have to have a tahara. Okay, so therefore, that's why it's called that. Let me just check if I'm missing anything. So really, and the truth is, it should be called taharos. I mean, that's what it is called, taharos. Now, the problem you're going to ask a question is, wait a minute. You have a mesechta called taharos, and you have the Seder is called taharos. Isn't that confusing? Aren't you going to wonder, we're calling an arrangement taharos? We're calling a mesechta taharos? Wouldn't this be an apparent catching a mistake? That you're using a general term and a specific term together. So he says, listen, people of high intellect, don't worry about these things. This is no way of a glitch for sages of logic. Because they have no problem using the individual term with the overall term. And very interestingly, he says, people of logic don't get thrown off by those things. He says, you have certain things, for example, the footnote in Yotesk is a very nice example. He says, let's say you have a category, let's say Eretz Bavel, right? The land of Bavel. But there's also city of Bavel, isn't there? Right? So you see that it can have a prat inside the klal with the same name. He gives other examples of that. So you don't have to worry that it's called Taharos, even though it's dealing the same name as the Seder.
Yep. I think Panama City is the capital of Panama.
Yeah, that's a good example. I'm sure there's more examples of that. I just don't know anymore.
Mexico City.
Mexico City, right? It's Mexico City. Okay, going for a triple there, Paul?
I'm not going anywhere.
You're playing geography with us here. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay, fine. Now, and now that we finished the relatively more strict tumas, and you can achieve tahara. Vidibra al tumas kalos, and also talked about the lighter ones. That was taharos, was the lighter ones. Tahara. Now the actual method of tahara. We never mentioned the method of tahara yet. We only know paraduma. Therefore, v'sider acher taharos. Taharos is really the euphemism for the lower levels of tuma. Now we have mikvos. Now we have to know how to be Torah by going to the mikvah. Now you might ask yourself, what's after mikvos? It left nida after all these tumas. And you should ask a question. Wait a minute. Nida is one of the regular tumas. Why was nida excluded? So you should know this answer from previous answers to why other things were knocked off. To how many people of the human race can become a nida?
At best,
That's the women.
50%.
That's right.
Well, it might be 50.1176.
But then again, in America's liberal world, 100%. But
Right.
we, Baruch Hashem, don't follow their laws. So why is nida the last? It's not a general lechol mean for all human beings. Because it's only for women. And since they're only for women, it doesn't go there. What's after nida? Machshirin. Machshir, remember, means things that need to be mukhshir, l'kabel tuma. Fruits and vegetables, when they're cut off from the ground, they have to be wet before they can be makabel tuma. That was machshir. Now the question is, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Shouldn't after nida go things like zovim? Because zov is a very related topic to nida, but it's not. Why is logical nida, zovim, and then machshirin? No. Again, we go to order of the Torah. Machshirin is in Yom Hashmini. The zovim b'parshas zos tiatoras hamitzora. And therefore, if it's in, and where's nida? Nida is also in Shmini. So you have nida right away, right in the beginning of Parsha Shmini. Then you've got Machshirin, which is in Parsha Shmini, and Zovim doesn't hit until the Parshas Mitzar. What's next? The Seder Acher Zovim Tful Yom. Now, after Zovim, we talk about a Tful Yom, meaning the person's already gone to the mikvah. He's just waiting for sunset. Why? Shomer Akasav Zos Torah Hazov. It talks about this, the Torah of Hazov. Etc. And all these other tumas. So you have full yom because that's the next topic in the parsha. Now, let me just go over that. Yeah, full yom. Let me just look at my notes. Yeah, that's the next thing. Now, everything we've talked about till now. When you're tummy, the whole body's tummy. He's leading us up to the next point. When a person touches it, his whole body becomes tummy. Now, because of this, he now comes to speak about tumah that's on individual body parts. And what's that? V'sidar achet v'yom yadayim. Meseches yadayim, where the hand is only tamei. We first want to finish people who are completely tamei. After people are completely tamei, let's just talk about a body part being tamei. And finally, the achar yadayim. What's the last one? The one we finished Shas with? Uktzim. What are uktzim? Stems. Remember, does a stem, if you touch the stem, does it make the whole apple tummy? Or if the apple's tummy is the stem tummy? Why do we leave that for last? Because it's not in the Torah. Stems is not in the Torah. It's more the rabbis made decrees and things like that, and that's what we ended. And therefore Taharos becomes 12 Masechtas. Comes out, the Rambam concludes, what are the number of Masechtas in Mishnayos? Shishim ve'achas, 61. Uprakim, how many chapters? Chamesh me'os u'shlosha ve'esrim. 523 chapters in 61 Masechtas. Now, if you recall, we said already earlier, if you count them up, they're 63. How does he get 61? Remember, the Rambam says the three bubbas are one. And remember, the others say they were 60 because they combine Makos with Sanhedrin. The Rambam does not combine Makos with Sanhedrin. So therefore, we have three answers. How many Masechtas are there? But generally, we say is 63 because we include every bubba separately. We learn Makos as a separate one. So it's 63. But the Rambam will tell you 61, and others could say 60, but you understand what they're focused on. Now, just 2 points before we finish. The commentary says, but wait a minute, aren't there a lot of other Maseches Ketanos? Small Masechtas like Maseches Sofrim, Smachos, Kala, Derech Eretz Rabbah, Derech Eretz Suta, Gerim, Kusim, Tzitzis. Why did the Rambam mention them? Because they were only put in after the Chasimas HaTalmud. Only after the Talmud was finished were these add-ons afterwards. Now, he mentions another very important thing. The Rambam is giving us the reason for all these connections. Now, we admitted a couple times, you notice there were kind of doichek answers. It was a bit of a kvetch, certain things, well, similar connections, one Masechta to another. So, but it's a pretty good job, but I wouldn't say it's 100% job. So other commentators, if you could check this out, I haven't looked it up, but it's easy to find out. Some say, simple rule. You know what the order was? The more prakim to a Masechta, those were first. The ones with the smallest amount of prakim, those were last. And many, many commentaries say that. So you can understand why, for example, Rabbeinu HaKadosh puts Maseches Rosh Hashanah after Yuma and Sukkah. The Rambam had to be matrek a little bit because really it doesn't make sense. Shouldn't Rosh Hashanah come before Yoma and Sukkah? Remember, we had that problem. So the Rambam gave us an answer, but it makes sense Rosh Hashanah come first. He says it's very simple. Rosh Hashanah has much less prakim than Sukkah and Yuma. And similarly, Kodshim. Remember, Kodshim doesn't make sense. Kiddushin. Kiddushin should be the first Masechta. Why is it last? But remember that what is Kiddushin? It's only 4 prakim. It's so small. And therefore, that's a reason why we could say that the order is different. So you can check it out, but generally the bigger Masechtas are first. The Bubbas are huge, right? And they have many, many prakim, and then Sanhedrin less, whatever, etc. So we go by size, and therefore the smaller, and that will help answer sometimes where the Rambam's answers were not totally complete. Also interesting, although the Rambam says it's 523, but the actual count is 524. Okay, that ends the Shesha Sidre Mishne. And now we're going to get to another very exciting new topic in here, discussing various students and what they brought and what they taught, et cetera, go through different generations and the transmission of Torah. Shkoyach, everybody. A good week, even though the forces were depleted, but Baruch Hashem, Torah goes on.
Rabbi, on Sunday, are we going to be back in class, God willing?
I will,
Right.
I can come back, I believe on Sunday. I'll have to confer with my doctor, but we'll let you know in ample time. For sure Monday, without question. Sunday's a borderline day. We'll definitely have class. I just don't know if it's going to be live or not, but you can count on class for sure. Okay. Shkoyach, everybody.